Alrighty. We are experiencing just a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to try and hang in there. So I'm going to go ahead and go with our story tonight. Our scripture is 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And it says that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And in our ERV version, our easy to read version, it says the Spirit of God gave us, does not make us afraid. I'm sorry. The Spirit God gave us does not make us afraid. His Spirit is a source of power and love and self-control. So tonight, I could not think of a better story than The Ugly Duckling. Not exactly a Bible story, but Miss Ikea is going to show you how it relates. Okay? So, let's read our story. The Ugly Duckling. If you'd like to get into a comfy spot and sit and turn me up on your device, go ahead and do that. All right? The Ugly Duckling. The mother duck was waiting for her eggs to hatch. Slowly, the first shell cracked. A tiny bill and a little yellow wing appeared. Then, with a brush, a bedraggled yellow duckling fell out. He stretched his wings and began to clean his feathers. Soon, he stood beside his mother, watching as his sisters and brothers all pushed their way out of their shells. Only one shell was left. It was the largest. And the mother duck wondered why it was taking a little longer than the others. She wanted to take her babies down to the river for their first swimming lesson. There was a loud crack, and there lay the biggest, ugliest duckling she had ever seen. He wasn't even yellow. His feathers were brown and gray. "Oh dear," said the mother duck. She led the family down to the river, the ugly duckling trailing along behind the others. They all splashed into the water and were soon swimming gracefully. All except the ugly duckling, who looked large and ungainly even on the water. "Oh dear," said the mother duck. The whole family set off for the farmyard, where they were greeted with hoots and moos and barks and snorts from all the other animals. "Whatever is that?" said the rooster, pointing rudely at the ugly duckling. All the other ducklings huddled around their mother and tried to pretend the ugly duckling was not with them. "Oh dear," said the mother duck. The ugly duckling felt very sad and very lonely. No one seemed to like him. So he ran away from the farmyard and hid in some dark reeds by the river. Some hunters came by with their loud, noisy guns and big, fierce dogs. The ugly duckling paddled deeper into the reeds, trembling with fear. Only later in the day, as it was growing dark, did the stir from his hiding place come about. All summer, he wandered over fields and down rivers. Everywhere he went, people laughed and jeered at him. And other ducks just hissed at him or tried to bite at his tail. As well as being ugly, the duckling was very lonely and unhappy. Soon, winter came, and the rivers began to freeze. One day, the duckling found himself trapped in the ice. He tucked his head under his wing and decided that his short life must have come to an end. He was still there early the next morning when a farmer came by on his way to feed the cows in the fields. The farmer broke the ice with his shoe, wrapped the ugly duckling in his jacket, and carried him home to his children. They put the poor, frozen, ugly duckling in a box by the fire, and as he thawed out, they fed him and stroked his feathers. And there, the ugly duckling stayed through the winter, growing bigger all the time. Now the farmer's wife had never had much time for the ugly duckling. He was always getting under her feet in the kitchen, and he was so clumsy that he kept knocking things over. He spilt the milk in the bucket from the cow. He put his great feet in the freshly churned butter. He was just a nuisance. And one day, the farmer's wife had had enough. So, in a rage, she chased him out of her kitchen, out of the farmyard, and through the gate and down the lane. It was a perfect spring day. The apple trees were covered in blossom, and the air was filled with the sound of birdsong. The ugly duckling wandered down to the river, and there he saw 3 magnificent white swans. They were so beautiful and graceful as they glided towards the bank, right where he stood. He waited for them to hiss at him and beat the water with their wings to frighten him away. But they didn't do any such thing. At first, he thought it was a joke. But they asked him again. He bent down into the water, and there, looking back at him, was his own reflection. But where was the ugly duckling? All he could see was another great and magnificent swan. He was a swan, not an ugly duckling, but a swan. He lifted his long, elegant neck and called in sheer delight, "I'm a swan! I'm a swan!" And he sailed gracefully over the water to join his real family. The end. So what can we learn from the ugly duckling? First of all, he wasn't a duckling at all. And I believe that God even shows us that sometimes, just like we talked about with revival, sometimes when the devil knows that we're trying to be really good and we're trying to do good things, he puts those bad thoughts in our mind, and those bad thoughts makes us think certain things about ourselves that isn't good. So he tries to make us think that things of an ugly duckling, and makes us want to put ourselves in those situations like the ugly duckling did, and maybe we separate ourselves, or maybe we take ourselves a certain way about ourselves. But God says that when we follow him, he gives us love, power, and a sound mind. Or like our other version says, power, love, and self-control to get through these things. And